Welcome to another episode of In the Lab with Hoopsology. I am your host, Matt Thomas, joined as always by my best friend and co-host, Justin Goodrum. Justin, how you doing, man?
Going really well. Just same old. Just the Olympics is happening, so kind of a downtime in terms of I guess basketball on American soil. A lot of international competition going on. How about yourself, man?
Doing well. Actually, this time around, watching a lot more Olympics than I did back for Tokyo. And really, I think even compared to like London and the Olympics through the 2010s, I've been getting into it a little bit more this time around. And while we're on the topic, Justin, just curious, just give me your like Olympics take. How do you feel about the Olympics, and what kind of Olympics fan are you normally?
I have a soft spot for the Olympics. I'm sure I don't want to get patriotic, but 1996, the Olympics in Atlanta. I would
Yeah,
think that's such a
Michael
huge.
Johnson.
Yeah, just you Kerry Strug, Dream Team 2. I mean, it's going on and on. It's such like a really an American cultural event that isn't. I don't think is really underrated in 2024. So I always have a soft spot for the Olympics. So I think in this year's edition, I think you showed this sentiment. The Tokyo Olympics, it was during COVID, not enough fans, and really, I think within Japanese culture, they're very much the way they express excitement, not a lot of yelling or how Western audiences or even in Europe, really cheer for sports is a lot more quieter. Which
Stoicism.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I like. I don't have a problem with, but I think the
Different.
way the crowd was within Paris, I really enjoy the opening ceremonies. It was different, just them on I don't know, just on the water, as opposed to like a traditional track and field stadium. And the events, I just think it's been amazing. The international competitions been awesome. Just I love seeing sports that just don't get the recognition that they. I think mainstream media here in America gives them that they get to shine on the Olympic stage. So I've been really just a huge fan of just watching like handball, water polo, synchronized swimming. I love gymnastics. I just think Simone Biles is awesome. Track and field, Noah Lyles, and I saw like the 400. I forgot the runner's name. He come from behind victory. My dad ran state champion in high school in the hurdles. So track and field is always something I'm really into. But I yabbered on enough about the Olympics. I think it's awesome this year's edition. It's nice to hear just a roaring crowd of fans just go crazy for their own country. So I think that's pretty cool. How about yourself?
Yeah, you mentioned water polo. People don't know how brutal that
Yeah,
sport actually is. I mean,
yeah,
it's like I know you're a wrestling fan. It's like underwater
it is.
wrestling going
It
on
is.
there. There is there's tension beneath the surface
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
watching water polo.
That and
Uh,
rugby too. Very violent.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Rugby. I do enjoy watching some rugby. I'm also somewhat romantic about the Olympics. There's something about it I just like. We've talked a lot about how we enjoy like the national tie-ins and just the element that brings to sports and kind of the heightened passion it has the potential to bring. I like seeing those types of things. So I'm pro Olympics, especially summer games. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Winter Olympics
Yeah, me
in
too.
comparison to it. Maybe it's just because I'm not at all a winter athlete, even though we do have some opportunities in New Mexico and certainly where you are, Justin, around Denver area. There's opportunities to ski and do things like that, but it just never really caught on with me. Do you have like a favorite and least favorite sort of Olympic event, just to quickly close out on this?
Good question. Favorite events? I would say just the gymnastics, like the team all around. I think it's the all around team final in gymnastics.
Yeah.
Um, I just it's weird because like the Americans were the favorite, which is strange to me because the Americans are always the underdog traditionally. I'm not a gymnastics expert, but at least when I was growing up, it was like rare for them to win the gold medal, and now Simone Biles is just dominating. So now they're the clear favorite. So that's usually my favorite event. Least favorite, I don't know. I think least favorite thing of I'll mention the least favorite thing of the Olympics, not the events so much, is I hate all these celebrity endorsements. Like
Mm.
I just hate how like I think the broadcast, and I don't believe people are this stupid of having, oh, there's Snoop Dogg. Okay, now this event's cool, and I love
Oh,
Snoop Dogg being there. Like I don't know.
it's a little
To me,
corny.
Yeah, it's just like I don't think
Forced.
people are like, otters or like trained seals out there of like, oh, there's a celebrity. I mean, this thing's cool. I don't know. It just comes off like you're patronizing to me. Like Snoop Dogg's at
Mm.
every single event. And he's making $500,000 every single day at being the Olympics. He's earned like 1 billion impressions. I read some sports newsletters, the sports business newsletters. So he's actually earning his money. Not knocking Snoop. To me, I don't need a celebrity endorsing this in order to get my approval of it.
It's for the
So
casuals.
yeah, that's just bugging me overall. Is there any
I
of
hear you.
that are weird to you or not?
Yeah, well, we could talk about that topic all day too, because
Yeah,
celebrity status is kind of
yeah,
at an all-time low in terms of perception and
sure,
popularity, and celebrities get criticized a lot more than they used to, like
they
when we
do.
were growing up. Like when we were growing up, you could never criticize, I don't know, like Brad Pitt or like a popular actor. And now, everyone it seems is like kind of split, like love or hate, or it's going to be one way or another
It's true.
since things are driven by clicks. But anyway, I love the 100 meter. That's
Me too.
always, I thought it's just so tangible and simple in terms of like, hey, we're lining up. We've got the shortest distance available here, and we're going to see who can get there first. I mean, I think everyone connects to that. I love the track events in general. I will say probably my hot take for the Olympics in terms of what I don't like are the swimming events. I know that
Oh
is
wow! Any of the swimming events?
just yeah. I mean,
Wow.
like,
Huh.
well, let me say like the racing swimming
Okay.
events.
Okay.
I'm only seeing your head and your arms move. I know they have the underwater camera and all that. No
Oh,
disrespect to the athletes. I did do swimming back in the day. I can appreciate how difficult that is to get that good and how technical it actually is. I just don't think it's a very good product. Is I don't find it very interesting to watch on
hmm,
camera. That's
hmm.
no disrespect. Hey, Katie Ledecky, you are great. You are an all timer. Michael Phelps, awesome. Props to what you all have done and accomplished. I just think in general in America, we're obsessed with watching it or there's heightened interest just because we're good at it. I don't think it's actually like that interesting to watch. And I was on swim team back in the day.
I I'll disagree with you. I think it's very exciting to watch, and I love the announcers too.
They are
That is
pumped
very
this
that
time around.
Well, the thing is when you have announcers that are invested within the sport that they're covering, it transfers to I don't know, to me it transferred to the audience member. And I think in some sports, and this is a larger topic where I had like it with mixed martial arts, we have an announcer that calls a bunch of different sports that is not
Mm.
invested in one. That does come off to the audience of like, I don't know, there's like something missing in translation compared to swimming, which those announcers I've heard for years since I've been a kid. So that transfers into, even though I may not know the swimmers, immediately I'm emotionally invested because I know about this Australian swimmer that's won all these gold medals, or Katie Ledecky or Michael Phelps in his heyday. So I don't know. I think short racing I've always really liked, and I think with track and field that translates. Like long distances, that's where you kind of lose me
Mm.
sort of when it goes longer. But I have to say, I don't know if you caught this, but the Olympics in this streaming era is perfect. I don't know if you've been on Peacock. I don't know how much you use
Yep.
Peacock or not, but I don't know if you've been on the Gold Zone.
Yep.
Like, I think it's perfect. I think
It's
this
a good
is
thing.
how the Olympics is meant to be watched, especially for your majority of the audience that don't really watch Olympic sports except every 4 years. It just goes to event to event to event. You see who wins the gold medal. It's exciting, the best moments. You don't feel like you're missing out on anything. You see a bunch of sports. I think that has been kind of the hallmark, and the ratings prove that out too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then it also takes care of like the time zone concerns
Yeah.
and things like that. Because basically, if you are committed and you don't want it spoiled, you just avoid social media
Huh.
and then you get on there and get it on demand and watch it when you want to. Also, last thing I'll say about the Olympics, and then I know we got to move into our planned topics. Shout out to Djokovic, man, maybe the GOAT of tennis, securing his gold medal. I did watch that match. I thought that was pretty awesome against Alcaraz.
Mhm.
A very compelling tennis match. I think even sports fans who don't really watch tennis all that much, you should go watch that match if you haven't watched it. Even though I just spoiled the result, you should. check it out if you're interested at all in that sort of competition. It was really cool to see. Probably, arguably, my favorite moment of the Olympics so far.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
A
Yeah,
37-year-old beats a 21-year-old, I believe,
that's crazy. Yeah.
and had lost to him in 2 previous opens. And anyway, I'm getting off the rails here. We have a lot to cover, Justin, and we've talked about the Olympics overall. We are going to be zooming in moving forward on basketball. We've got to talk about men's and women's 5x5, men's and women's 3x3, some controversies in terms of FIBA and their relationship with America potentially. We also have some news about one of, I don't know, basketball, just pop culture in general, an icon in sports media and media in general, Charles Barkley. We have some news there that we'll go over as well to close out the show. Before we jump into it, just want to say thank you again. We've had more and more subscribers. Hitting that subscribe button on YouTube and following on our podcast feed. So just want to say shout out and thank you for your support. Always appreciated. And please keep it going. Let's keep the discussion going. Share with a friend who may be interested. Once again, thank you for your continued support of the show. We always enjoy bringing this content to you. So, Justin, let's open with the men's 5x5. And I think America has performed as expected. I think there are little nuances here and there that are interesting to bring up that we can get into as we go along. But just for a quick recap, in the preliminary round, USA beat Puerto Rico by 21, 104 to 83. In the quarterfinals, they made easy work of Brazil, winning by 35 points there, 122 to 87. We have the semifinals coming up tomorrow at the time of the recording of the show. The U.S. will face Jokic, best player in the world, and his team, Serbia. France will be facing Germany, which could lead to a very exciting U.S. versus presumably Germany, who were the world champions last year, or maybe the home team of France can get all the way into the finals. U.S., I believe, are 16.5-point favorites to Serbia last time I checked, and that seems like a pretty fair assessment. So, Justin, just give me your overall thoughts of it's been since before the preliminary round started, since we've talked about this Team USA. We talked about, some of the drama maybe with Jaylen Brown, things like that. We're kind of past that at this point. Now that things have come to fruition, KD joined up with the team. He has played. He became, I believe, Team USA's all-time leading scorer just recently. So give me your thoughts on the roster and if the team is meeting expectations, exceeding what you've seen.
I think they've exceeded expectations so far. I think originally entering the tournament and even talking to Noah Eagle, who's been doing commentary with Dwayne Wade for the 5-on-5 for both men's and women's. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're expecting the tougher competition to come on the men's side. And honestly, within the Olympic competition and outside the exhibitions, they haven't really challenged too much. They, and especially heading into kind of the final days of competition, which has really been impressive. I think honestly, and this might be strong to say, and I would love to hear if you disagree with this. I feel like a lot of these controversies, besides Joel Embiid, the whole thing about his citizenship and him playing for Team USA, I think it's been a lot of made up controversies. Like with Jayson Tatum not playing, it's just like, well, look who was in front of him. It was Kevin Durant. Like, to me, I don't really understand, like, when a player doesn't get enough playing time, or I don't know, it's about LeBron and not Steph Curry. Like, to me, these are a bunch of made up controversies that don't matter in the long run, at least in my opinion. So I don't know. Am I downplaying this too much? Because it just seems like Team USA has basically destroyed a lot of the competition, which has really been, I think, upgraded as we've discussed in terms of the international stage. But a lot of things I'm hearing, I just don't think there's any substance. Am I wrong to say that?
I don't think so. Here, I guess I sort of agree and disagree, and let me explain why. And maybe it's not so much an agree or disagree thing, but July is a slow sports month.
Yeah.
We all know that. Like after the NBA finals are over, really things kind of slow down. We've had entertainment from the WNBA, that's been great, but it's still slow, even considering that. And so this is something where NBA offseason kind of takes precedent. And then when we have an Olympic year or a world championship year, things like that, there's more of a focus on that and things are brought to the surface a little bit more. Here's what I will say that I think there are some things that you can tell and gather from playing time and minutes and some of the drama that's in there. And I do agree that it's overblown. But when you see Tatum has just won the NBA finals and yet he has to ride the bench, I think you see sort of a hierarchy that is played out. Uh, and that is that Tatum is not superseding a Kevin Durant or a LeBron James. And you can discuss and debate whether that is talent based or whether that is kind of power based in terms of the massive brand you bring to the table from the scope of the league, or otherwise, just your general power position on a roster. I do think there are some interesting things to take away from that as far as this goes. You can certainly go too far in that direction and over emphasize things as far as that goes. But in terms of Jayson Tatum talent wise, I mean, if I were to pick one of the Tatum versus LeBron to be on my roster today, I would pick Tatum if we're going into an NBA season. That's a different thing when you're looking at legacy play on Team USA, where LeBron has the history and the cachet. Tatum does not at this stage of his career. So it is interesting to see him getting, blocked in spite of all the recent success from playing time. But I think ultimately you can get into a trap of overanalyzing this. And it makes sense when you think of the history of the league and where Durant and LeBron are in comparison to Tatum. Multiple championship players, also Olympic history there compared to recent champion Jayson Tatum.
Well, if you take a look at the last stats, right, they destroy Brazil, and LeBron plays 16 minutes. He has 12 points. You take a look, has 9 assists, and he has 3 rebounds. Jayson Tatum played longer. He has 5 points. He goes
Hmm.
1 for 5. He has 3 boards. He has 1 assist. So to me, and look at LeBron, what he did in the exhibition games. So I think it's a performance thing of coaching. They're winning, they're performing. And I never heard from every analysis I have heard, I don't think there's been, hey, LeBron's holding this team back. He's past his prime. Why is he out there?
Well, there
He's
was
not
early. There,
during the games. Like,
yeah, in terms of the offense being too centered around LeBron in the beginning and too high of a usage rate,
okay,
that I
that's
think
fair.
since that criticism came out, I do feel there have been 2 or 3 games since then, and that has sorted itself out and kind of resolved.
I'm just saying with LeBron, he's such. I think why I'm willing to hear we have the GOAT debate of him versus Jordan is that he's such a physical specimen, but also he's such a Swiss Army knife of basketball. You do everything. It's not like you hear the phrase of a master, what's it called, jack of all trades, master of none, right?
For
And
sure.
but he's a master of all of them. So that's the problem when you have what you were talking about in terms of a short burst of competition compared to a long NBA season in which, LeBron's going to take games off. He's going to get hurt. He's older. Jayson Tatum's younger. Here, you got 3 weeks, and it's just a burst of it's a sprint through the Olympics. And he's well experienced, and he can be, and also, like you mentioned, Tatum won the title. LeBron's been off where he can rest up and get ready for this short tournament. So
True.
that kind of gives LeBron the edge here. So, but I
Well,
don't know. I just feel like what I have a problem with is this whole referendum of like Steve Kerr made a terrible mistake of benching
mm,
Jason Tatum. He hates him. Like it's just this whole. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, who cares? It's just
it's a
like
tough
if they're
coaching job for that
yeah.
reason.
My thing is
Well,
if because if
easy
this
coaching job, but you're going to take a lot of heat no matter what you do.
And guess what? If Tatum plays the maximum amount of minutes, and if they lose, what are they going to say? Why isn't
Fire
LeBron out?
Kerr. Don't
Fire
bring
him.
Kerr
Why is
back.
put LeBron out there? So to me, I think they're performing. They get the gold medal. I don't really care how they get the job done. To me, that's I'm just
Well, and let's be real. I mean, in terms of all-time player rankings, I mean, you have one guy on that roster who's top 10 all time, in my opinion, LeBron James. A lot of people would have him a lot higher than top 10, but
sure,
I think it's fair to say just about everyone,
safely,
90+%, have him top
safely.
10.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas I don't think you have that with certainly Jayson Tatum, who may be hotter in the moment. It's also a great Celtics team, blah, blah, blah. I digress. You have Kevin Durant, an all-time great. You have Steph Curry, an all-time great. I mean, this is kind of a farewell tour in a way, potentially, for those three players. Makes sense to emphasize that. And they also have huge pluses you bring to the table, whereas you're kind of overanalyzing in, not you, but
Yeah,
media in general are
sure.
overanalyzing by splitting hairs between the difference of those two
Well,
players.
it's very unusual because in previous generations, players like Durant, LeBron, and Steph Curry, they be very seen as past their prime. They're older. Give them 5 minutes and they sit the bench. And instead, because of technology and the way they take care of their bodies and several other factors, they're past their prime, but like they still have a lot left in the tank. I mean, you saw that performance Kevin Durant put on earlier in the Olympics. That was incredible. Like he didn't miss a shot.
Yeah,
It was one of the greatest I thought performances I've ever seen. I mean, that was incredible. So,
yeah.
and this is of a age that people would find, in the 90s or 80s, this guy's be, a senior citizen. So I think that is a very interesting dynamic that a lot of these players that are entering their prime, they have to wait a lot longer in international competition because kind of the old guard, they're playing longer. So I think that's an interesting dynamic there.
That's true. And they have, that seniority, which
Yeah,
oftentimes dictates things on a team roster. Like, hey,
yeah,
maybe you're not the best player, but you've been captain X amount of years or something like that. And you're right. We do have the elite performance also coming from LeBron and KD that justifies them being out there. And we haven't really, other than a scare in exhibition against South Sudan, we haven't
yeah.
really been in danger of losing at this point. So you may as well let it roll. And there have been instances. Embiid, for example, got benched when US
He
had
did.
the rematch against South Sudan. You would assume this upcoming game against Serbia, Embiid will be out there more in order to try and confound or give extra problems to Jokic in that matchup. So I think, Kerr, I think deserves some kudos for switching things up and kind of playing to these matchups. Um, I always think, and we can get back to team dynamics if you want to discuss it more, but I always think one of the most charming things about the Olympics and Olympic basketball is that you have these teams that have maybe a great talent, like looking at Greece, and then not really much else around that great talent. So you have like Giannis trying to pull things up and be that Superman that honestly he's a little bit accustomed to being anyway. Um, and then you have, just not enough around him to contend with a team as balanced as Germany, for example, who eliminated Greece. You have a similar thing with Serbia, who I'm actually quite impressed that they were able to beat Australia in the quarterfinal. But any thoughts overall just about maybe some of the other teams or other storylines that you've seen that have been of interest on the men's
Well,
side?
yeah, I'm a little bit surprised of Canada's performance. I thought they would
Yeah.
do a little bit better, to be honest. And even you mentioned Serbia. I think they've been a kind of a disappointment in this tournament. um, Despite, they struggle against Australia and the U.S. I mean, you take a look. That's the game where Durant had an amazing performance. He scored 23 points. I mean, once Durant got out there, they were destroying them. I mean, it was over once Durant got back out there. So to me, I have been a little bit surprised at kind of the lack of competition for the U.S. side. I thought it'd be a lot closer, and I think it speaks to how serious I think this team is taking this Olympics. I think they saw what happened previously, and I think they're a lot more motivated at this point. And I think you're seeing just I understand because it's so interesting because when the U.S. struggles, it's like, well, these guys don't play around each other. But when they're dominating, it's like we have the best talent and the rest of the world sucks. Where I think that's not the case. I do think that with this team, I think you're seeing Durant, LeBron, and Steph Curry really take hold of this team, and I think it's brought out a lot of flaws in Joel Embiid. I think he's taken the most like abuse of
Mm.
this Olympics, just in terms of his performance and just the whole citizenship thing and this how he's out there on the court and him getting benched. Um, but really, with all that, I think I've been surprised how easy it's been for Team USA, and I really don't see a different outcome like them against Serbia, to be honest, unless they just take them lightly or they're just not mentally focused.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the same thing for the championship game as
Yeah,
well, with how it's been. I want to circle back to the Joel Embiid situation because I do think that's very interesting. Um, what do you make of this whole controversy and how it's rolled out, and kind of the broader topic of, I mean, should there be different standards in terms of players playing for certain countries? Like, just what do you make of this, and maybe give us a little bit of the background of it, since we haven't, just generally speaking, since we
yeah.
haven't talked about that on the show.
So what I get the impression of is that Joel Embiid, I think he was born in Cameroon. Let me just double check that so I am not mistaken, but I think that is the case.
I believe
Um,
you're right.
so he was, yeah, born in Cameroon,
Yeah.
and from what I have heard, just through the national media, is that he wanted to play on an Olympic team. And that the plan, I think Casey Kiernan went over this in his video. That the plan was for him to actually play for Cameroon, but he was worried that they wouldn't qualify, so they're out. So he wanted to play for France, but he got hurt. I think it was around 2020, 2021, didn't work. And then he landed himself on the Team USA team, which he has citizenship in Cameroon, France, and the United States. So he's able to play for Team USA. I I don't know. I think if you have citizenship, to me, I think that qualifies for you playing for that country. I think it should be. I think for Olympic competition, I do think it's just weird that like, oh, you become a citizen and they immediately play for that squad. So I think maybe living in the country for a couple of years
Yeah.
before you can play for that team. Because I think if there was a situation, I think in track, I think that I don't know the details, but I believe somebody who I think it was a track and field star that lived in America, then represented Sweden in the Olympics. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe our track buddy
The
can like.
pole vaulter.
I believe so.
That's right. Born in Louisiana and
Yeah,
represented Sweden.
yeah,
And the distinction was that his mother was on the Swedish national team. And that was, I guess, enough to be an in for him to compete for Sweden. I was a little bit confused why he chose to compete for Sweden. I guess maybe just pride in ancestry or something like that. And of course, his mother's history on the team. But I
yeah.
agree that that's a very, very loose connection compared to even citizenship.
Yeah, it's just strange. I mean, there's some rare exceptions, so I don't think this is like a epidemic or a problem. But I do find it. I think some clearer guidelines by the IOC would be appreciated in terms of this representing the country, not only at the IOC, but just whatever international federations or whatever sport these athletes are competing under.
I think what most people would agree with, and what differentiates Olympic or national based sports in general, uh, I think most people would not want to see it turn into a thing where it's a mercenary thing,
Yeah,
and you have like half the players that have never lived or do not have family ties to given country. Like, hey, oh, you didn't make Team USA, come over here, play for, name your country, Team Cuba, I don't know, but you don't have any history or ties to that country. You know, just to give, I don't know, an outrageous example. I think people don't want this to turn into like citizenship free agency,
yeah,
and things
right.
along those lines. That
Like a transfer portal, but internet.
exactly.
Yeah,
I,
that
I
makes
think
sense.
most
Yeah,
people would agree with that. Is the perception I get anyway. It's interesting. Um, I I do think there's like a huge opportunity and different pressure, like just to use the example of Embiid, the imagine the weight of a country, and you could potentially be talented enough to get that country to qualify or just simply do things that they've never done before. I find that such an interesting challenge, and maybe I guess I find just for myself a little disappointment that that challenge wasn't taken by Joel Embiid, and that's not to criticize his decision to play for another team. That's his personal choice. But as a fan, I would like to see what can you do with Cameroon? What can they bring to the table? This brings another whole area, and also, I mean, just eyes on the world stage for that country, which I think can be a very
Yeah.
positive thing.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I don't know. I don't really think it's that big of a deal to me.
Yeah,
But I just would like you were saying, if it gets out of control, I just some tighter standards, I think would be beneficial.
yeah, might be a big deal for Cameroon though,
Yeah,
if
that's true.
if things had played out differently.
Yeah.
But yes, point well taken.
I think I don't want to sound arrogant, but I don't expect the U.S. to have any problems heading into the medal competition. But again, it's just good to see them show their dominance, and a lot of these this controversies are just made up, and I think they've done a good job of just ignoring it. And they also enjoying the Olympics too. Like we've seen these other athletes on this team at other events cheering on their Olympic teammates. So that's cool to see. I've seen a lot of them out there. Anthony Edwards, I guess he loves table tennis, so he's been at those events. So I'm glad they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah, also want to give a shout out to France, who really stunk up the court during exhibition play, and thankfully have turned that around, and they
Yeah, they
are
have.
in the semifinals at
Yeah,
least. I think Germany is the consensus favorite in that matchup, but with home court advantage, you never know. Maybe France can pull their way into the finals, and of course you have both Wemby and Gobert on that team, so interesting to watch that unfold as well. Let's move into the women's 5x5. The women were projected to be dominant in 5x5 play, and they have pretty much, I would say, lived up to that. Let's see, in the preliminary round, they beat Germany by 19, 87 to
mhm.
68. In the quarterfinals, they beat Nigeria by 14 points. And semifinals will be happening on Friday, August 9th against Australia. On the other side of the semifinals will be France, once again showing up for semifinals against Belgium. So the US and France, the only countries with men's, women's teams in both semifinals for men's and women's, interestingly enough. And excellent for France there. Not unexpected for US, but still a good showing. Any thoughts that you've had on the women's play throughout this tournament?
Um, Not too much, like you said. Expected dominance from them. I mean, I think compared to the men, I think the women, I think what's cool is that they have a lot of versatility. I think some of the women on this team actually play 3x3, which we'll actually talk about later. But there's a lot of synergy between 3x3 and 5-on-5 where the men don't necessarily have that. So it's cool to see like Kelsey Plum. I think this is her first time on this squad in particularly. She played 3x3 before. So it's cool just to see players like that. They're not too much to add. I mean, they're so dominant. Like Noah Eagles said, check out that interview in our archives. It would be shocked if they expected any type of a challenge. And I think he mentioned Germany as a potential threat, but they handled them pretty easily. So unless there's some kind of catastrophic upset in his words, I expect them to win the gold medal pretty easily.
Yeah, well said. And just quickly, uh, the only kind of drama that's been stirred up has been a consistent drama in the WNBA season as well. The drama with Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, etc. And we've seen, I think, since the controversy first came out about Caitlin Clark not being included um, in this national team for the Olympics. Do you have any leftover thoughts or stronger, less strong thoughts? I know this is all hindsight and I don't want to stew over it for too long, but do you feel like it's a missed opportunity that Caitlin Clark and maybe now Angel Reese as well weren't on the team? Um, what are your thoughts regarding that controversy? Looking out about a month and a half later from when that started.
The only thing I'll say is from a coverage standpoint, the way how NBC does their coverage, I'm wondering if Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese were on these teams. I mean, you're able to watch every single Olympic event in their entirety. Like, because with NBC, they're touting just their wraparound coverage and combining all their numbers, and they're averaging around 30 million per day in terms of viewers. So that's an extraordinary number, and I think way higher than what they experienced in Tokyo and I think previous Olympics. So to me, especially their nighttime coverage from a casual viewer, I mean, I don't think if a casual viewer watching the Olympics, I don't think wants to see 2 hours of just one particular event. I think they want to see just different, sports happening throughout the day because they've been at work and they want to see what's going on in the Olympics. So overall, I don't know. I don't think it really hurts them in the long term. And I think since they're so dominant, I don't know. And it really, thank goodness this hasn't reached like this whole culture war situation in terms of her making a team or not. So I don't view it as some kind of massive mistake. I do have issues, and I mentioned this before, of just the criteria of her, like what the coaching staff have said in terms of we're not familiar with her and all this, which she's played international competition before. So and plus, even if she hasn't, that seems to be, I think, a lame excuse for her not being on a team. So I just wish this like a lot bit more transparency and just honesty, as opposed to she's this mysterious player that came out of nowhere. Like there's plenty of footage on her. She's playing international competition. Like this is not some like shocking thing of adding her to this team, and she would just adding it through this mix would be some kind of like massive thing. I mean, she's so versatile as a player; she would adapt pretty easily. Her or Angel Reese. So overall, I mean, I'm not really missing her on this team. At the same time, I wasn't really enamored with just I think, poor excuses of her not making it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I mean, I did a little bit more digging because it was a topic of interest. And
Sure.
you look at past precedent as well. It it was treated as something that is so uncommon for a rookie to come in. But if you look at Candace Parker, if
Yeah.
you look at Diana Taurasi, and there are other dominant collegiate female athletes that have come in rookies and instantly gone to the Olympics. It's not an outlier thing for this to happen. So that does feel like kind of a snub for an odd reason. And I would say because we had enough of a track record that Angel Reese had at minimum an elite level skill of rebounding. Honestly, at this point, I feel like both Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark should have been included on this Olympic team. I do think it's a missed opportunity. I do think you're right. In the long term, I don't think it'll be that big of a deal, but I think the next time around, you're gonna see
Oh,
both Clark and Reese on this team.
well,
Would be
the
my
Olympics,
prediction.
especially in America. I mean, that the level of media attention is going to be twice as much, and the way that they broadcast a lot of these events, you're probably with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. Also another thing too is not only those two, Paige Buckers, Juju Watkins. I mean, that's going to be very, very interesting to see who actually makes the team. So I mean, if their popularity skyrockets, that's what I think it's going to be. We're not even mentioning Haley Van Lith as well, who's won the bronze medal. We'll talk about her later. But this, the way this team is molding and the way the popularity is happening, I mean, you're going to see the broadcast of what we're going to see in Paris be totally different, just because it's going to be suited and more tailored to the American time zone. So it's going to be very. I think the way we're seeing this Olympics, I think it's going to be different when it comes in 2028.
Well said. Let's move into 3x3
Yeah.
basketball. I do want to dig into the sport itself, but let's first take a look just how things shook out for the U.S. men's 3x3 team. They had a very mixed result and an early exit. So they were able to beat, or I'm sorry, they were defeated by Latvia early in the pool round. They bounced back against France. They beat China, um, and then ultimately were eliminated 21-6 by the Netherlands. There were injury issues with Jimmer Fredette that played a role in this. But I know you have a lot more with regards to 3x3. So maybe we want to talk about that.
I do. And I always like alternative sports, or I think modifications to current sports. I just think it's cool. I have always been kind of counterculture in that way. And you see in the Olympics in America, I don't know if you saw the promo for this. I think it was Jalen Hurts. He did a promo for like flag football in the Olympics. So it's very clear that we're seeing a lot of different modifications to traditional sports happening in our culture. I don't know if you are aware of I think it's the Savannah Bananas, banana
Mm,
ball. Are you
mm,
aware of that? Just
uh-uh.
they're basically like the way to compare it to is kind of Harlem Globetrotters, but for
Oh,
baseball. But the games are legit, and so they do like different skits. It's like more entertaining form of baseball, and it's really caught the sports world by storm the last few years. And I think with 3x3, I think we saw this with the Big Three, Ice Cube's league, and then what we're going to see with Unrivaled, with what's been backed. It's a women's 3-on-3 league that's going to happen in 2025. All that to say, with this is that 3x3, I think, is rising in terms of popularity, in terms of kind of your casual sports fan that wasn't really aware of it previously. So I just want to mention a couple of things. First, as to why I think the if you're a casual this basketball fan, you might be wondering, why is this roster not filled with like any type of like surefiable NBA stars, or even people roster members from the Big Three. Ryan Windhorst said this on Pat McAfee's show. Quote, you really want to talk about it? I'll tell you why. Because they don't. FIBA doesn't want the US to do good at 3-on-3. They really want that to be for countries who can't field 5-on-5. And they do these things like they have all these different layers and layers and layers of things that you have to do to qualify. I don't just mean making the team. I'm talking about Kyrie Irving can't just show up and play. The only way you can play is like playing in 15 qualifying events. It's not just 15. I'm just coming up with a number. And then I think this transfers to what we're going to talk about later with women's 3x3. Like Caitlin Clark can't just play on 3x3. She has, even if she wanted to do it in the first place. Basically, there's just a bunch of hoops and loops for, I think, American players to make this team. And I think it'd be wise just to get a lot of information in terms of the qualifying criteria to make a national 3x3 team, because on the women's side, I think we saw this in the women's all-star game, loaded with WNBA players, college players that are really well known. So you take a look at even the men's side, or even the men's college, I think there'd be a lot of great opportunity for national players that really do well on the national stage that play college basketball. They're not on this team either. So that does raise some red flags as to why there's such a huge disparity for the American 3x3 team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also a quote by Windhorse at the end of the statement where he
Yeah.
says, quote, because FIBA doesn't care about ratings. They just care about, like growing the game elsewhere outside the US, so that's not their priority, end quote. And I think if you look at the 92 Dream Team and what happened there and how that grew the sport of basketball, I just don't understand the framing of, if you're trying to grow the game, ratings are a measurement of growth of the game. So why would you not care about ratings? Furthermore, it's going to be a more legit product if you have the best talent available playing in it. It gives it a sense of illegitimacy, and less talent equals less quality of a product. I mean, I think that's just a safe
Agreed.
general statement for anything, any sporting event, any product in general. So I think there's a huge disconnect with FIBA there. I think there's obviously some like sensitivity, some anti-American sentiment potentially. Now I think, like you said, I would want the full picture of what does qualifying entail, and why is this uniquely different for the United States. but I just think they are stunting the growth of the game, actually having the opposite impact of what, according to Windhorse, they are intending.
Why? And I'm wondering why is those blocks on 3x3 but not 5-on-5? So
Right.
was there a lot of ton of qualifying? I don't remember tons of qualifying events for the men's roster. So why is this qualifying events for 3x3? That makes no sense to me. So I think that's a huge disparity. And I will say, at the risk of sounding naturalistic, the game of basketball, the nucleus is in America. I'm sorry. It's just that might sound extremely naturalistic, but in terms of actually growing the game, like you mentioned, Matt, there wasn't a dream team in Serbia. There wasn't a dream team in Japan or China. The dream team was in America because American players, I think, I mean, look at it, international players. They don't want to play for a European league. They want to play in the NBA. Where's the NBA located? In America. The nucleus of America, nucleus of basketball in America. Look at South Sudan. The reason why South Sudan did well, that wasn't at the risk of sounding ignorant. I don't think it was because of FIBA. It's because the NBA has taken great steps to improve the game in Africa. Which league? And who's the coach of that team in South Sudan? Luau Deng. Which league did he play in? The NBA.
And who
So
funded it?
funded it.
Luol
Exactly
Deng.
right. So it wasn't funded by any other international league. It was this was the NBA has been a huge influence. And I think in terms of just the game, look at how many players of the South Sudan team and other teams internationally, they play in America. I mean, a lot of those teams do. I mean, a lot of those players do. So to rule out America and especially just to be, I guess, anti-American, I feel, unless we get some additional information, I think it's not only just harming just the game internationally, but like you're right. I agree with you. I think it is illegitimate in terms of what is happening. Like, at least compared to the women's game as well. I mean, you have a lot of I don't get why there's these barriers, with the men's game in particular. Is it their fear? I don't know. It just doesn't really make any sense to me that we don't have at least, players from I guess the even under 20 team not be on this 3x3 team really doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's baffling. I agree with what you just said there, and I don't think that's an unfair statement at all. I mean, we're talking like the large history of the sport.
Yeah.
And another point that I'll say, I mean, one of the reasons why I enjoy 3x3 and watching it, it is a different feel, but you turn it on and it reminds you of playing in a playground growing
It
up.
does.
Like when you have less than 10 of your buddies there, you could play 3-on-3 and run that half court pretty nicely. So I like it in that it feels like a very organic thing for the game, and you're also scoring in ones and twos, which has the playground feel to it. And that is something that, like you said, I mean, I'll co-sign it. It developed from American playgrounds, so
Yeah.
American basketball courts. Um, so, and furthermore, I just like with anything else. I mean, I just want to see the best talent compete,
Agreed.
and I
Me too.
think that goes right in line with the best growth of the sport, the best ratings, and the best of all worlds for it.
Well, I hope that the winners, the Netherlands, take up the Big Three challenge. The Big Three has challenged the Netherlands to um, a winner take all game for 150,000. So we'll see what happens. I think this is on August 18th, and they stated that all travel expenses will be paid for. And I watched that a little bit of that game between the Netherlands and France, heartbreaker for France, a buzzer beater for the Netherlands to win. So very entertaining. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if there's another, especially if Unrivaled does well, if there's another like 3x3 league that is based in America besides the Big Three. Because I think that league has not really been taken seriously. And I know there's been a lot of just not any harmonious relationship between the Big Three and the NBA. And I'm curious if there might be something in the works there of I don't know if the NBA or there's another entity planning their own league because I do think 3x3 there is a future of it being really popular. And I have to admit I've been disappointed in terms of the growth of the Big Three, and I don't know what it is. I would expect it to be more popular than it is now, just in terms of TV ratings and just in terms of just the basketball conversation. So hopefully, this international game does happen between the Netherlands and Big Three because I would love to see it.
Yeah, maybe uneducated guess would just be that it's competition
Yeah,
for
that's true.
the NBA. So
Yeah,
it's not getting the
sure.
full-throated support of the NBA, and yeah, that may be stifling things, but more to come on that, and we'll keep our eyes on 3x3 there. Let's discuss the women's side of things. We had in the quarterfinals, the United States beats China to advance to the semifinals, where they lose by 2 points to Spain.
Mhm.
Germany beats Canada to advance to the gold medal game, where Germany ends up successful taking the gold. Spain gets the silver. United States does bounce back and get a bronze against Canada in the bronze medal game. Thoughts on the women's 3x3 before we move from 3x3?
Yeah, Haley Van Lith has some strong comments. A shocking loss to Spain, like you mentioned. They did beat Canada. After the loss, Van Lith said that's 100% BS. And this is basically the refs wanted US to lose. They're flopping left and right. They're not that good. Great job, ladies. We know who should have won. So I don't know. People complain about the refs all the time in sports. I mean, or just in sports in general. So I mean, whatever. It's just I think there's a lot of expectations on this team just because of the lineage before. So a bummer, but I'm sure they'll bounce back as well, just in terms of what's going on. But I do think 3x3. I think it's entertaining. I think there's a lot of value. I think remember on this team, Cameron Brink was supposed to be on this team. She got hurt. So I think what happens if she's on this team? I think that might be what you mentioned with Jimmer Fredette getting hurt. I wonder that changes things with Cameron Brink. She's a veteran of 3x3. So, I mean, there might be a different outcome. She was having a really, I think, potentially breakout season with the Sparks before her entry. I mean, that was such a bummer just to
Absolutely.
see her go down. So, overall, I mean, an Olympic medal is nothing to sneeze at. I think that's what I think a lot of casual sports fans usually gold or nothing. I think, and I think from casuals talking about the Olympics earlier, I think what I would implore sports fans to really realize is that an Olympic medal is pretty a prestigious thing. Just to have just on your resume there, and just because they didn't win the gold doesn't mean that they're a failure at all. Being an Olympic medalist goes a long way. So I'm sure just Haley Van Lith is probably a ruthless competitor. So I'm not surprised she said that. But a bronze medal is nothing to sneeze at.
I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest.
No,
She's usually a little bit more composed, but this is something that happens once every 4 years. You don't get
sure.
many cracks at a gold medal, so I understand the frustration. And like you said, she is an intense competitor.
Mm,
So I think maybe emotions just got the best for her.
prob-
That other countries or anyone with anti-American sentiment is going to be ripping on anytime you blame the officials for a loss or
sure.
make complaints like that. But that's the nature of sports. All in all, I mean, a great job by the 3x3 team
Agreed.
to bring home that bronze. So, Justin, I'll let you drop the news regarding Sir Charles Barkley. Our last topic of the day. Let's give it a go.
Yeah, so a little bit more news about the NBA TV rights. I think it's debatable in terms of like your casual sports fan, in terms of the impact. I think for your viewer that just wants to catch out an NBA game, I think in 2025 it's going to be a little bit confusing because the games are not going to be on TNT. They're going to be on NBC, Amazon, ESPN, and then the future of inside the NBA has very much been in doubt. And another thing that's been in doubt is really Charles Barkley. Before all this TV deal news really got going, the big I don't know if you want to call it controversy, but news stories with Barkley was where he's going to go in terms of his TV future. And he was rumored with Live Golf. I think we talked about that. And he stayed with TNT and he signed I believe, a 10-year contract with TNT. So fast forward, TNT's losing the NBA rights. Now TNT's taking, I think Warner Brothers Discovery, excuse me, is taking the NBA to court. What's going to happen inside the NBA and specifically Charles Barkley's contract? And he announced originally that he's going to retire, But now he has announced that he is going to stay with TNT. So here's the report. TNT Sports announced that Tuesday that he is going to stay with TNT, has reaffirmed his long-term commitment to the network, and will see him contribute for many years to come. Here's the statement. He says, "I love my TNT Sports family. My number one priority has been and always will be to our people and keeping everyone together for as long as possible. We have the most amazing people, and they are at the best at what they do. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with them both on shows we currently have and new ones we currently develop together in the future. This is the only place for me. And I have to say, I've been impressed with the leadership team who is fighting hard and has been aggressive in adding new properties to TNT Sports, which I'm very excited about. I appreciate them and all the colleagues for their continued support. And for mostly our fans, I'm going to give them my all as we have kept them entertained for years to come." I'll say this and I'll pass it to you, Matt. With Barkley, I think the myth with him is that any television property that he's with turns to gold. I think that's false. And I think
Mm.
we saw that with him and Gail King. They had a show, like a political show on ESPN, and it was terrible. Sorry, not ESPN. It was on CNN. Excuse me. It got canceled. He was even notified that the show was canceled. I think he read about it on the internet. And I'll say this: I'm not a fan of Gail King. I'll just keep it as that. I think it's kind of oil and water their personalities, but I think it proves. My point is, with that show being a failure, you have to be very careful in terms of how they're going to use him with other sports properties. I just don't think adding him and just hoping the show's going to be a success is going to work. I think there needs to be thought in terms of how he's going to mold in terms of other sports properties within Warner Brothers Discovery. So I am skeptical in terms of how that's going to work. But what do you think of this news with Barkley? At least for now, staying with TNT past the NBA remaining in their family of sports.
Yeah, that's really well said, because one of the strengths of inside the NBA, let's be honest, is that those guys, and part of the
Yeah.
appeal and why it feels so genuine is a lot of times, I'm not saying they do zero prep, but a lot of times those guys can come on and wing it and it be a great product. There are even times where in the sport of basketball, like the famous Shaq quote of I wasn't familiar with your game. I apologize, I wasn't familiar with your game," when interviewing Christian Wood, back when he kind of
Yeah.
broke out with the Rockets a little bit. You can have those types of things and still have entertainment and a legitimate show. And honestly, a lot of great conversations too that have come from that show
Totally.
in spite of that.
Yeah.
And maybe even because of that. And I think you're right in saying you can't expect to just plug that in if it's a general sports show, if it's a general political show, things like that. You can't expect to plug that in. Now, can they do something fun and entertaining that's more along the lines of generic, where they do talk some hoops, but since you don't have the NBA rights, it's not completely focused around hoops? Remains to be seen.
Yeah.
If you're keeping that inside the NBA crew, I think people would want to watch them talk about just about anything if you keep it a casual type of format. So I'm curious if they do something like that. I do think Charles Barkley staying there is maybe the first big domino that is falling, that will keep some sort of continuity there, or at minimum like a confidence there with TNT Sports in general that wasn't there before that announcement.
Yeah.
So they need more and more structure and planning, like what you had mentioned. But I think this gives TNT a much better outlook moving forward than they had before this news.
And I just don't want like shoving sports personalities down our throat either with Stephen A. Smith. Like, just separate from his opinions, it was just like especially when he signed his latest contract, he was with the UFC and then he was with the NFL, and it was just trying to shoehorn him in all this coverage. It's just that, like, I mean, look at even politics. I mean, I can't. Take whatever station you want. I mean, I don't see Sean Hannity on every single show that's on Fox News, or on CNN Anderson Cooper on every year. I mean, that's just, you get whoever, pick your political affiliation, like whatever channel you want to watch. Like, I think you would get sick of the person, I would think, right? Like on every single show. And I think with sports, I don't know why that's the same logic of shoving Stephen A. Smith down everybody's throat, whatever sport that they're watching. I don't want to see Stephen A. Smith on an American Cornhole Championship. Like, I mean, I don't know. It just seems ridiculous to me. So I think with Charles, I just don't want to see him on I don't want to see Charles, because I know the Mountain West is going to be on, TNT Sports. Like, I don't want to see Charles Barkley, call a Lobo football game. I think that'd be torturous for him. I don't think he deserves that. But two, I just think I think that's a little bit too much of synergy in terms of, having this guy overexposed in all your sports properties. So
Hey,
I just
as
hope
a
that
Lobo fan, I might have to disagree with you,
Oh, really?
Justin. I might want him on our broadcast.
I feel sorry.
Just to see the train wreck happen.
I just feel sorry for him, just exposing for that, the horrors of Lobo football. I mean, a full disrespect intended, and I'm alumni. So just, I don't know. Lobo basketball, I think that would be cool. But overall, I just don't want to see him just on all these just sports properties on TNT. I just think that'd be a little bit too much. And I think ESPN has done that with Stephen A. And I just think I'm kind of over that.
Well, hey, TNT, if you are looking to compete with First Take, I know that Skip Bayless just became a free agent
He did.
at
Yeah.
FS1. So
Oh my God.
I know Charles Barkley does not want to be in a room with him, but could you get them on a TV set together?
He would retire. He wouldn't do it. He's so
I think you're
affirmed in
right.
his beliefs. Like, no amount of money would get him to do a show with Skip Bayless. I would be shocked. I think he'd be like
Yes.
selling out to himself. And also, he just hates Skip Bayless. So
He really
there's no
does.
way. I mean, if he paid him like $1 billion, I don't think he would do it. I really
Yep.
don't think so. Anybody else on this planet, I think he would. He would do a show with Trump, with Donald Trump, before he would do a show with Skip Bayless, in my opinion.
I think you're right. And of course, I'm saying all that in jest. Guys, hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Let us know your thoughts about the Olympics and how the teams have been performing. Have they met or exceeded your expectations? Let us know if you think, take that I didn't give, Anthony Davis looking a little bit quicker on Team USA. Is this good things for the Lakers next season maybe in store? I don't know. Let us know your guys' thoughts. Appreciate your support and hanging in with the show. We will be back very soon with more great interview content. And we've got also some player rankings that we have to follow up on from last year that will be dropping pretty soon. Looking forward to that conversation and maybe stirring up a little bit of righteous anger from the following in terms of where our player rankings land. But anyway, stay tuned for that. For Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. Take care and peace out.
See you next time.